What's up? I see some people joining in. I'm kind of new on this, so I don't really know exactly how everything's going to work. But in about 15 minutes, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of start talking about the beginning of World War II. And I'm busy right now. And we'll go from there. But if one of you wants to try to ask a question, then maybe I can. You need to go back in your bed now.
But Daddy.
What?
I want some water.
Get some water and get into bed. I don't want to see you in here again.
Okay.
So if one of you can try to say something in the chat, then I think that I can see specific questions. So when do you try that?
Let me go potty.
Go back in your room now. And all of my children are coming out of their rooms. Now, one. Hey, okay, I'm seeing some chat now. I don't know exactly who you are, but if you'll just kind of like let me know who you are. First of all, can you hear me? Oh, hey AJ, how's it going? So you can hear me? Awesome. Okay, cool. All right. I see a lot of people are starting to join the stream. It's a little early, so I don't want to. Hey, Grace. I don't want to jump into a bunch of information right off the bat. And by the way, I know that I look weird. I don't know what on earth made me think this would be a good idea, but my daughter was like, "Shave your beard," and I was like, "Well, why not?" So did that and regretted it immediately. Okay, go. All right. What's up, Kayvon? How's it going? I don't know who Ray is, but we'll figure that out. Catherine, how are you, Catherine? Selena, how are you? So anyway, you can ask me questions as we go along. Okay, cool. Hey, Catherine. Hey, Harrison. How are y'all? I think this is actually going to work. I'm excited. Alex, what's up? So it was probably my children that were screeching. I got to make sure that Lachlan gets into bed. Yeah, I look like a weirdo is what I look like. My wife was mad that I cut it. She was like, now I look like I have a much younger boy and it looks weird. I was like, well, it's a good thing no one's leaving the house for the next 2 weeks, right? Hold on a second. I got to go get my kids into bed. I'll be right back. Okay, we need to do it now. We need to hurry up. What about the vocab quiz? First of all, I don't know who King Owlboy is, but my question is, what about the vocab quiz? What do you mean, what am I going to do about it? Okay, so if you started the vocab quiz and it kicked you out for whatever reason, then what's happened is because you only have one attempt, it won't let you back in. All you have to do if that happens is just send me a message through Schoology or through send me a message through Schoology or send me an email, and I can clear it. Hey, Amelia. So I can clear your attempt so that you can redo it. So I need to do that for Emery and Alex. I'm going to do that right now so I don't forget. Can you still see me when I switch tabs? I guess you probably can. So yeah, I'm just going to go in here and clear Alex and Emery's attempts real quick. So yeah, that's one of the really annoying things about Schoology is that it has a tendency to do that, and there's not a lot that I can do to fix it other than just clear your attempt. So if that happens to you, just make sure you let me know, and I'll be happy to clear your attempt, and we can get you back. Good night, buddy. We'll get you back and ready to go. Where is Emery? Oh, here you go. Oh yeah, I see. You only got to answer one question. All right, so I'm going to clear that right now. All right, Emery, you should be good to go to retry it in a little bit. And Alex, you didn't even get to answer a single question, so I'm going to clear that for you too. And Alex, you're good to go as well. So if that happens to you guys, just make sure, just reach out and let me know what's going on. And yes, Reese is babyface and creepy. Hi, Emily. So yeah, so that's good. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, because we've got a fair few people here, is in a few minutes, like in 3 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if you've got question, why is Cole Bradley in here? Cole, did you not get enough of this last year? Okay. All right. So so in the next 3 minutes, I guess we'll start officially going through information. I'm just gonna post that for everybody to see again. I'm just gonna go ahead and tell everyone that I'm live now. So this is working pretty good. I'm actually kind of excited at how easily this went. Laughlin, get in your bed. Yeah, you might hear me say that a few times. They're having trouble getting in bed. The whole idea of doing it now was that they would be in bed. All right. And I've got the hat on because, not to be rude. Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about World War II. We need to talk about the beginning of World War II specifically, and then what I'm going to do is try to set up another one for tomorrow where we will talk about well, really not the beginning of World War II. We're going to focus on the whole war in Europe. So I'm going to cover the whole war in Europe, and then tomorrow we're going to cover the war in Japan. So you can kind of just think of this as what I usually go on about in class. So if you've got questions, you can do that. You can send me those questions. That's fine, and I'll be happy to answer those. But then if you want like a hard copy, so you're like, oh, he doesn't have a whiteboard, whatever, then all you have to do is realize that I've got the notes posted under the lecture notes area. But to be clear, this is not that's not going to have all the details that I'm going to give right now. Also, I believe that once I have this up, what I can do is probably edit out the first few minutes of this, and you should be able to go back and rewatch it. And those of you who are not live right now should be able to get that as well. Hey, Xander. So I think that that will work. So yeah, so let's get started. So when we're talking about World War II, and we're going to focus on World War II in Europe. Sorry, let me get in position real quick. I'm kind of in a big easy chair, so it's kind of a weird position. All right, so World War II in Europe really begins with understanding Hitler. And the video that I tried to post the other day didn't work because it was too long. So yeah, the one on Japan did show up, so you should watch that. But we're going to kind of cover the rise of Hitler briefly, and then we'll get into how the war actually proceeded in Europe. And I'm going to try to keep this to about 30 minutes. I really don't want it going over that. Yes, yeah, that's correct. The video for Japan, the Germany notes were not posted. So this is basically what I said. So Hitler really rises to power based on the anger and hatred following the Treaty of Versailles, and then the continuation of the Great Depression that follows after that. So the Great Depression exacerbates a vocab word, exacerbates all of the problems that were created in Versailles, especially in regards to reparations. So Germany had to pay back money to France and Britain as a result of the treaty, right? And those reparations were problematic, especially when the Great Depression hit, because Germany couldn't afford those reparations. And so they actually borrowed money from the United States and then used that to pay back Britain and France. And the irony is that Britain and France owed money to the U.S. from World War I, and so then they were paying that money to the United States as well. And so in 1929, when the stock market crashed in the United States and the economy collapsed, it created a chain effect across Europe and basically threw almost all of the European countries into a depression of their own. Now, this created a really bad situation in Germany, and you guys may have seen how inflation, hyperinflation took off in Germany. The value of the German mark at the time was so worthless that the kids were using it as building blocks. And I think there's a picture in your textbook of something like that. And so this hyperinflation and the ultimate failure of the German economy led to a lot of issues and a lot of discontent. Hitler, in his younger days, actually attempted to overthrow the German government called the Weimar Republic in the 1920s in an event known as the Beer Hall Putsch. And the Beer Hall Putsch was this attempt at doing that. And he got arrested for that. You would think he would, suffer some pretty severe consequences, but ultimately he was only in prison for like 2 years. But while he was in prison for those 2 years, he wrote Mein Kampf, and Mein Kampf is his biography, I guess you could call it. He called it My Struggle. That's what Mein Kampf means. And give me 1 second because I've got another kid out of the bed. What? I'm really sorry. Okay, but you got to go back in your room and close the door. What? All the way.
No.
Yeah. 1, 2,
You shut the door.
3.
Alright.
Shut the door now.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Now.
Um,
Now.
hold on 1 second.
Look, the door.
All right. Sorry. Yeah, he was supposed to be asleep by now. So anyway, All right. So anyway, what I was saying is that his book basically gets very famous because a lot of other people in Germany during this time period had these same concerns, these same ideas. The economy was really putting people in a lot of pressure, and so people, as they read his book, were like, "Whoa, I identify with this," and he became sort of popular as a result of this. And so then his rise to power later on is facilitated by this book that he had written, people had identified with. And so Hitler actually becomes Chancellor of Germany. We're going to skip over a lot of the details here because they're not really necessary. But he basically becomes Chancellor of Germany through through a combination of his popularity with different people groups. And I've actually looked into why he was so popular and exactly who he was popular with. And it turns out it was a pretty wide coalition of people. Like I was curious if it was like just poor people or if it was like educated people, stuff like that. It kind of came from all different groups in Germany. He wasn't 100% like widely supported by any stretch of the imagination. Well, I mean, he was widely supported, but he wasn't like over half of the population liked him. But then they sort of got in line because they were afraid. And so Hitler ends up becoming the chancellor of Germany, and he's slowly going to take more and more power after a series of events that happen in Germany. And ultimately, that's how he comes to power. So the thing you have to understand if we're going to get into Hitler and World War II in Europe is what exactly were his goals. So what was Hitler trying to do? So Hitler's goal, guys, I'm really sorry. I've got to deal with this. Hold on. He keeps screaming. I'll be right back. No, you don't. You're going to do that right now. Right now, play game. Now. I'm busy and I can't talk to you right now. You're making too much noise. If you scream again, I'm saying your bottom. No, I don't want to hear you again. Go to sleep. All right. So, Hitler's goals. All right. So, Hitler's goals are kind of simple. Number one, you have to understand that okay, so hey, let's watch the language on the chat, guys. Yeah, the beard's gone. Yeah, it's going to come back real quick. Real quick. What is? Ha! Comment removed. All right. Okay, so what are Hitler's goals? So to understand Hitler, you kind of have to understand that he's a big fat racist. And the question that a lot of times people have asked is, was he a racist because he was trying to gain power, or was he just a racist and everybody else was like, I'm a racist too? It doesn't really matter. Either way, he was using his hatred of people that weren't German, specifically Jews, to gain popularity within Europe and within Germany specifically. Jewish people had always had sort of a position in Europe where other groups had not liked them very much. There's a lot of reasons for that historically. Most of them are not very well justified, but it was mainly because they were a minority group in Europe who had had some success and that had created resentment. But in Germany in particular, you know, German nationalism is largely revolving around this idea that to be German is to be you know, a part of the German country. And so if you weren't ethnically German, if you didn't speak German, etc., then you could not actually be German. So if you were Jewish, if you were Russian, if you were a communist, if you were well, not a communist. We'll get to communists in a second. If you were Jewish, if you were Russian, Slavic, etc., then you couldn't do that. You couldn't be German, and so they were excluded from German politics. And so that was something. And then Hitler's building off of that, and then adding in the idea of a master race, that the German race is a master race. And he wants to create this idea of the perfect German society. And the perfect German society wouldn't include Jews, it wouldn't include Slavic people, it wouldn't include the Roma, who were gypsies, it wouldn't include any of those people. It wouldn't include it wouldn't even include things like homosexuals or people with mental handicaps, or even people with physical disabilities. He wanted to create sort of a group of what he viewed to be perfect, the perfect person. You've probably heard the whole blonde-eyed, blue-haired thing, but in general, it was all the people that didn't do that. And so that was kind of what Hitler was going for. Now, the second part of his motivations for what he ended up doing was to expand territory and to create what he called living space, or it was known as Lebensraum was the German word. So to create Lebensraum, or living space, for the rest of the German people. All right, and that's what he was trying to do. And so the early part of World War II, the World War II part, excuse me. Yeah, you should go get. I'll wait for you for a second to get your notebook. And also, let me just pause for a second to say hello to the college students who joined. May you have a lovely break and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm not going to show you my house right now, guys. Sorry. My computer's plugged in, and I'm not going to toss it around. You can see the back window, though. And the reflection of the computer screen. Oh, look, we've got like a feedback loop going. All right. Why did I shave? Let me just go ahead and get the elephant out of the room. So my daughter told me as I was getting ready this morning, she was like, "You should shave." And I thought, I wonder what my face looks like. I haven't seen it in 8 years. And so then I did it. No, I don't really agree. My wife was really mean to me about it. She kept talking about how I looked like a baby, and that I needed to grow it back immediately, which is going to happen. I definitely do need to grow it back. I think that I look way too young without it. And also, yeah, it's Fiona's fault. Also, my head, I didn't realize how like short my head is without my beard. It's weird. Yeah, I've got 2 weeks. Don't worry, I can get a full beard in 2 weeks pretty easy. All right, so are we good? Let's get back to what we need to cover. I don't want to make this hour and a half long. Okay, so living space. Hitler wants to create living space, or Lebensraum, for the rest of the German people. And so that's what he's doing. So how does he do that? He does that by annexing territories with German-speaking people in it. The first area he looks at is Austria. Austria has historically had a large number of German-speaking people, and so he does that. And then he goes into some other areas that have German-speaking people. A good example of this is the Sudetenland, which is a part of Czechoslovakia. Thanks, Treasure. And he specifically targets this area known as the Sudetenland, which is around the outside of Czechoslovakia. So if this is Czechoslovakia, you kind of got this area, and these are the German-speaking people in that area. Now, after he does this, people in Europe aren't just ignoring what Hitler's doing. They basically see it, and they're worried by it. They're worried by his movements. In fact, after he annexes Austria, they're like, "Hey, don't do that anymore." The League of Nations says, "Don't do that anymore." And then what happens after that is that the Hitler goes into the Sudetenland and he takes that area. And the League of Nations is again like, you can't do this. In fact, a really famous event occurs where they have what's called the Munich Peace Conference, and the Prime Minister of Britain flies out to Germany, to Munich, and actually it's the very first time he'd ever flown on an airplane, which is a fun fact. And anyway, he gets there. Neville Chamberlain is his name, and he talks to Hitler, and Hitler's like, "Don't worry, I won't take any more land as long as you let me keep this land." And the Prime Minister of Britain's like, "Yeah, okay, fine. You can keep this land as long as you don't take any other land. Don't do that anymore. Bad Hitler. Don't do that anymore." And so Neville Chamberlain flies back to Britain, and Hitler gets the Sudetenland, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that's the end of that." And in fact, Chamberlain actually claims that he has preserved peace in our time. Peace in our time is the quote, and I actually think Tony Stark takes that in Age of Ultron. But anyway, so this idea of peace in our time is kind of funny in retrospect, because we know that this happens, just a few months before World War II actually breaks out. Because what France and Britain basically tell Hitler is that he can't take any more land if he wants to remain on good terms with the League of Nations. And what the line in the sand is Poland. If Hitler invades Poland, which also has a German-speaking population, and he wants to take that, so if he takes that, then the idea is that if he does that, then the idea is that this means war, World War II. And it is so difficult to focus when I'm getting all these chats over in the corner. I might have to just cut them off for a minute. I'm not ignoring you. It's just I'm trying to get through this. All right. So anyway, inevitably, what's going to happen is that Hitler is going to invade Poland, because Hitler wants a war. He's been building up. One of the reasons he's so popular is because he's able to revive the economy of Germany. He does this. One of the big ways he does this is by building a ton of roads. He builds all of these roads all across Germany, and at the time, it's like, oh wow, he's building an interstate highway system, or the Autobahn, right? And that's really good for the Germans because they can get to work easier and faster, etc. But what he's really doing is he's creating a system that will allow him to move his troops very quickly across Germany in case a war happens. And when we talk about the Blitzkrieg, which we're going to do in a minute, this road system is a critical part in creating that Blitzkrieg. All right, and so in 1939, September of 1939, Hitler invades Poland. And this is the beginning of World War II officially in Europe. And so this immediately is going to allow him, it's going to mean that Britain and France declare war on him. Now, Hitler is not an idiot, and he had studied the war before him, and everyone in Germany had always kind of known that fighting a war between France and Russia is bad. And so before the war broke out, before Hitler went and invaded Poland or did anything rash like that, he signed what was called a non-aggression treaty with Joseph Stalin. This is really important, so you're going to want to write this down. He signs a non-aggression treaty with Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union. And so that means that they're not allies, but they're also not enemies. Okay? And so that means that Stalin and Hitler are not going to fight each other. And in fact, they actually agree to split up the land equally. And so when Hitler invades Poland, Stalin actually invades Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And a lot of people don't usually realize this, that Stalin is taking territory during this time period either, but he is, and he's actually sending people out to different camps, the gulags and stuff like that during this time period as well. So there's a lot going on in that regard. And so Hitler starts World War II with his invasion, but he does it with the assurance that Stalin is not going to attack him. So really, when the war starts, he's got to only focus on France. And so very quickly, Hitler is going to take his troops. He finishes conquering Poland in about 2 weeks. The video should go up if you click the link that you did, you should be able to see the entire video. So yes. And so Hitler is going to turn his whole army onto France, and he hits Belgium too, because Belgium's in the way, you know, and France and Belgium, and invades them very quickly as well. And in fact, the plan was for him to invade northern France and Mussolini to invade southern France. And so this is when he unleashes what's known as the Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg means lightning war in German, and this was the very rapid deployment of tanks and airplanes, but most importantly, jeeps. Okay, jeeps is the thing that allows him to mobilize troops as quickly as possible. I'm hoping to be done in about 15 minutes. So jeeps, he moves those into France as well. And France is conquered in the north in about 15, not 15 minutes, geez, that's the video link. In about 3 weeks. It really doesn't take him long. There's a very famous picture of Hitler standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, and the Blitzkrieg is super successful. Like, you know, in World War I, Germany invades France and ends up stuck at the northern border for the entire war. Well, Hitler had completely blows that out of the water, and France is done. The northern part of France is done in the first few weeks of the war. It's really kind of amazing. It's about a month. It takes them about a month to get France conquered. Now, the southern part of France is not conquered because Mussolini fails miserably because he's a failure in life, and so Hitler's like, "Hey, Mussolini, you know, why haven't you finished conquering southern France yet?" He's like, I'm trying," but you know, ultimately, Mussolini is just going to screw up and be a really bad ally for Hitler. And so Hitler, after taking France, kind of enters the war. Actually, enters a period which is sometimes referred to as a Sitzkrieg, because he's just kind of sitting there and waiting, and he's kind of staring off across the English Channel at Britain, because they're the only people left in Europe that are facing him down. So if you were to look at a map of Europe, I mean, he conquers some more areas than I talked about. Like, he conquers Denmark, he conquers Norway, he takes over several areas. But if you look at a map of 1940 Europe, what you'll see is that Hitler controls all of Europe with the exception of Spain, which is neutral, Switzerland, which is neutral, the Soviet Union, who he's got a non-aggression pact with, Italy, who's his ally, and then Britain. So it's basically Britain versus Germany at this point, and it really doesn't look very good for Britain. And this is when Hitler begins what is called the Battle of Britain. And the Battle of Britain is an aerial fight. And it's when the Germans were sending airplanes over the English Channel to bomb the British into submission. And the idea was basically, if we drop enough bombs on London and on England, that they will surrender and we don't have to send troops over, because sending troops over the English Channel was something that was going to be very costly and cost a lot of German lives. And Hitler didn't really want to mess with that. And so the Battle of Britain was sort of designed to be the easy way to make Britain surrender. Now, there's a lot of really important pop culture and stuff that comes with this. The whole keep calm and carry on thing, that comes from that time period. It was posted all over Britain. Winston Churchill, this is when he becomes a really famous historical figure for sort of keeping the British tough in the face of the fact that their city was being bombed on a regular basis. And so I guess if you think about now sucking and having to stay home and all that stuff, then you could think about how sucky it would be to be in that same situation, except having bombs dropped on your head on a daily basis. That's kind of the situation the Londoners were in during this time period. And in fact, if you like children's literature, the Chronicles of Narnia is set during this time period. And the reason they go up to the countryside where they end up finding the wardrobe is because they're trying to flee from the bombing that's taking place. And so this bombing goes on for a couple of years between the British and the Germans. And so the war's kind of at a stalemate at this point. There's not a lot going on. And Hitler makes the decision that he is going to invade the Soviet Union. All right, the Soviet Union's had the non-aggression pact with him, and now it's time. He's, dealt with pretty much everyone else in Europe. It's time to invade the Soviet Union and take out Stalin. Rude. And so, um, and so he does that. Um, and this is sometimes people refer to this as Hitler's mistake. And yeah, I mean, in retrospect, it was for sure. But there's some issues. There's some reasons why he did this. One of the biggest reasons why he invaded the Soviet Union was because he was running short on oil resources and needed oil resources that the Soviet Union had. And so in 1941, in the spring of 1941, he invades the Soviet Union and pretty much beats the snot out of the Russians for the first good bit, and is taking out large portions of the Russian army, and he's really very successful early on, and he's going to invade all the way through Russia, all the way to a city called Stalingrad. And Stalingrad was named after Stalin. It's on the Volga River. It had been called the Volgograd before Stalin, got all megalomaniac on it. And this is where the Russians sort of have their last stand. And this is called the Siege of Stalingrad. And the Siege of Stalingrad is the turning point of the war in Europe. So you need to write that down as a very, very important battle. So in 1942, Stalingrad is the turning point for the war in Europe, because what happens here is that the Germans, they moved through Russia so quickly that they actually missed a large portion of the Russian army. It's kind of funny. Basically, so this is, imagine that this is the city, right? And the Germans come in and invade, and they surround the city. But they move so quickly, they actually passed a large Russian army. So they're back here. And then the Russian army finds the German army. They're like, oh. So the German army is actually trapped between this Russian army and this Russian city. Yeah, I'm going to repeat it. So Stalingrad is the battle that is the turning point of the war in Europe. Okay, Stalingrad is the turning point of World War II in Europe, because what's going to happen is, and it takes a while for this to happen, but the Russians begin to win. And as the Russians begin to win, they slowly push the Germans back out of Stalingrad, and then slowly push them out of Russia altogether. In addition to this, winter hits, and the Germans actually go through 2 winters in Russia. Napoleon only really goes through 1, but the Germans go through 2. And so this German winter, not German winter, the Russian winter also plays a toll as well, which is a very famous thing. So don't invade Russia during winter. Okay, if any of you guys are thinking about world conquest, that's a classic piece of advice. Just don't invade Russia during winter. And so they begin pushing the Germans back, and slowly over time, Stalin gains more and more momentum. Hitler loses momentum, and so Germany is pushed back by Russia after this battle. And this is why it's called the turning point. The other major thing that happens at the end of 1941 is that the Japanese, who we haven't talked about at all, and we're going to talk about a lot tomorrow, were an ally to the Germans, and they bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7th of 1941. Now, I don't know if the Germans couldn't have appreciated this too much, because it meant that the United States joined the war on the Allied side. And so the Americans get involved in the war. And by 1942, the Russians are winning in Stalingrad, and now the Americans are involved in the war as well. When is Russian summer? Russian summer lasts from about June 30th to about July 30th, I believe. That's Russian summer. But the sun never goes down. Anyway, all right, enough of that. So what's going to happen after this what's going to happen with the United States? So the United States joins the war, and they first invade. And this is where I would ask: does any of you guys know where they invaded first? And they and they invaded in North Africa, actually. So Germany had actually expanded so far that they had expanded down into northern Africa. And so the Americans that first saw action during World War One were in North Africa. They quickly crossed the Mediterranean Sea and up into Italy, up into Italy, and then they invaded up the coast of Italy through Sicily. And this was the idea here was that they were going to be able to take Germany and Italy from the south, which would be easier than taking them on from the west. Ultimately, this didn't work super well, but now you've got Germany in the middle, and you've got Russia pushing in this way, and the United States pushing in from this direction. And so Germany's starting to get clamped. Now, the nail in the coffin for Germany, or the beginning of the nail in the coffin for Germany, is in 1944. And on June 6th of 1944, you have D-Day. Okay, so D-Day actually stood for Day, because they actually didn't have a specific date in which they were planning it. Basically, they were waiting for clear weather. So, all right, so here's this is the coast of France, and here's England. All right, so they knew that they were going to have to invade across the English Channel right here. So you're waiting for good weather to come across so that you can make this invasion. And also, you didn't want a specific day because the German code breakers were looking for any type of evidence on that kind of thing, and would be ready and waiting to, spoil any type of invasion. So on June 6th of 1944, D-Day goes into motion, goes into effect, and American, British, and Canadian and Australian troops all landed on the beaches of Normandy, which are on the northern coast of France. And these were extremely heavily fortified beaches. If you don't know what this looked like, just go watch the first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan. That's the best advice I can give you. Like, seriously, you probably just type in YouTube beginning of Saving Private Ryan, and you'll get a very good idea of what this invasion looked like. It was extremely, extremely costly. Lots and lots and lots of people died because the Germans were basically sitting on the coast with machine guns and bunkers and just killing people as they came in up the beaches. And so the strategy from the Ally perspective was to send so many people in that they basically couldn't shoot them all. Which is a really good way to get a lot of people killed, but it did work. And so after D-Day, now Germany's in the middle, and you've got Russia coming in from here, you've got Americans and British coming in from here, and you've got Americans and British coming in from here as well, and Canadians. Don't forget about the Canadians. And so Germany is surrounded at this point and being pushed in on all sides. And it's not very long after that that the war comes to an end. By 1945, the war is over. And this is the end of the war in Europe. And that's also going to be the end of this live stream tonight, because there's a lot of other things I want to go. But before we end everything, does anyone have any specific questions about content? I agree. Saving Private Ryan's a good movie. Maybe we'll watch it. Was the German government receptive to Hitler's popularity prior to his? Yeah, I mean, he had begun to gain popularity as far back as Mein Kampf, and Mein Kampf is published several years before he actually comes into power. But he was good at he was very good at knowing what the German people liked to hear and giving it to them. Did Hitler escape? No, Hitler did not escape. Hitler actually shot himself in his bunker. So he actually committed suicide, which explains the joke that I made earlier this year, if you did see that. Will the AP exam be pushed back? I have no idea, and I have several questions about that. So, yeah, we have no idea. Was Hitler's mom Jewish? This is something that I've heard before. I think it was actually his grandmother that was Jewish. Why did Hitler break his agreement with the Soviet Union? Mostly, as far as what we can tell, it was for resources. Now, there's not like we don't have in writing, I, Hitler, am going to invade the Soviet Union because of this reason or whatever. But it makes sense that he would be concerned about oil. That one of the reasons why he was expanding in North Africa was to try to expand oil resources, and the Soviet Union, in fact, if he had have actually taken Stalingrad, it was the last thing that was between him and the oil fields of Baku in Azerbaijan, and he would have had enough oil to go the long run. Stalingrad is so important. If you can't remember anything from this, Stalingrad is what I would say is probably the most important thing. And so that's probably why he invaded the Soviet Union. Sure, you can use the bathroom. What is the work that needs to be done during these 2 weeks? I am posting that daily. So all you really need to do is just take a look on Schoology. But the good news is most of your work for tomorrow is going to be watching this and making sure that you understand the material. So by doing that, you got a good portion of your work done for tomorrow. No, I don't think that he escaped to Argentina. Do not. I think that he's dead. Tupac is alive, though. Pretty sure about that. Any other questions? You're going to remember nothing. You can go back and re-watch some of this. And then one of the big things, the extra credit is due Monday. The test is also due Monday. Or excuse me, the test will be Monday as well. So I think I saw some people asking me if the test would be Friday. No, the test is not going to be Friday. The test is going to be on Monday. It is going to be run through College Board. So I'm going to use the College Board website to sign that test. As far as submitting extra credit, it's probably going to be as simple as take pictures of it and email it to me. I might see if I can find another way to do it. But Juice WRLD is not alive. I just learned who Juice WRLD was. Like I literally, really recently, because I'm so old, I only learn who rappers are when they die, because then I see the stuff about it. That's a hard question, Lou. I like Wu-Tang. Don't make it timed. Yeah, it's definitely going to be timed, Brooke. Sorry. I think it is anyway. Is it still a random assignment or a multiple choice? Yeah, all right, so that's a great question, Reese. I really wanted to do multiple choice. What I'm probably going to do is there will probably be, it's probably going to be multiple choice, and then I will give a writing assignment later. So you'll have like later that week we'll do a writing assignment. Was the Nazi Party already popular among the German population? The Nazi Party itself wasn't popular among the German population, but the ideas, some of the ideas were popular. Scientific racism was still a big deal. The quiz was too short. I'm sorry. Hold on a second. Someone asked. Oh, Jessica. Jessica, I have no idea as far as what that's concerned with, or as far as that presentation is concerned. I'm going to just put that information up. Make sure you guys in Euro are reading, and I actually will probably post some of these live chats since we're covering basically the same stuff. What's on the primary source work? Good question. Basically, what I've done is just given you 5 documents, and you need to write a point of view for all 5 of them. Make sure you're explaining why, though. I looked at a couple of them today, and they're not explaining why. And it's going to mean that they're not going to get all the points. The primary source work is not timed, no. In fact, I think I saw Selena had started it at 1 o'clock today, and it's still working, so that's perfectly fine. You can totally take your time on that. Put the vocab was, yeah. I'm going to put all the grades in later. Will you explain exactly what a point of view analysis is? Yes. Point of view analysis is when you look at a document. I would not feel good about that, Treasure. I would not feel good at all. Okay, so a point of view analysis is when you take the document, you read it, and you take a look. Who's the author, right? The author is the critical point of doing point of view analysis. Why would this person write the things that they wrote? What's their motivation? Or who were they targeting? Or what was going on at the time that would cause them to do this? Any of those things, any explanation for the writer's motivation is going to work as a point of view. Does that make sense? So if you really are concerned, then what you can do is you can write a practice one and email it to me, and then I can let you know if it's good or not. Hannah, you need to get into the Euroschoology. So I really don't like Mussolini after that aside. Yeah, he's pretty bad. Mussolini's not a great person, which you already knew. All right. Well, seems like we've got this mostly covered. So the plan will be tomorrow is that tomorrow I'm going to go live again, and I'll probably, I guess this time is probably, I don't know, what time works best for you guys? This time kind of seemed to do all right. Yeah, I know I can't take me seriously either. Okay, what we'll do is we'll plan on doing this time again. I'm going to cover the war in the Pacific tomorrow. If I'm going too fast, if I'm talking too fast, let me know and I'll try to slow it down. This time is a little late. You're an old man, Harrison. All right, so yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow then, and I should hopefully have. Yeah, we'll do island hopping tomorrow. Maybe I'll have a little bit more hair. Probably not. It's not going to come back fast enough. All right, so I'm going to end this now. I'm going to give it an attempt at editing, but you should be able to go back through here and see most of what I was talking about. So y'all have a good night.